Well, I want to thank all of our very distinguished speakers today. And this is the moment in which we open the panel to questions. I would like to ask you to keep your questions very short and very to the point. And as the moderator of this group, I will take the prerogative to ask the first question, if I might ask that. And I'd like to ask that question of the president of UnitAid. Sir, do you think it is a good precedent to confiscate, or in other words, a tax that you demand a tax, when is it better to opt in for people to give of their free will? We have invested $1 trillion in Africa to date. And there are those who would argue that it is not an issue of more money, but an issue of consolidating the NGOs and managing the money in a more efficient way.
Yeah, thank you for your question. First, if I take an example of the missiles, for example, missiles. When in 1990 we decided to do a global vaccination against missiles with enough money, we saw that the mortality of this disease is decreased by 98% because we had enough money. For malaria, until 1992, the international community gave $500 million a year. From 1993, we passed to 2 billion. And now we see the decrease, the dramatic decrease of malaria in 35 countries. So if it's a problem of money. First, that we need money. The second thing is we need money for what?
That's the issue, sir.
We need we need money for what? Not to assist the economy. I think it's absolutely awful to take the money to give for the economy. But for global public goods, if you don't have money for drugs, if you don't have money for health, if you don't have money for education, if you don't have money for the beginning of agriculture, if you don't have money for drinking water, you cannot have, after that, engineers, you cannot have businessmen, you cannot have nurse, you cannot have the beginning of a society, you know, and the state. So I make a big difference between global public goods and economy.
Is this on? Very good. I thank you for that answer. My question really dealt with the fact that you made the assumption you don't have money. I made the assumption that you, in fact, have had $1 trillion. So I guess that was the jux of my question. Thank you. Questions, please. If you could keep them short and pithy. Thank you. We'll get you a microphone. Yes, please. Stand and give your name, please.
My name is Marcus Freitas, and my question is this, and it goes a little on the line that you mentioned. The panel says it's a framework for sustainable development, and I do not see that happening unless we do have a global compact of everyone in place. My question is this: how can you, as a government, particularly in the case of Brazil, ensure sustainable development without making your production in the country so expensive that companies might decide to send it overseas or to other places in the world where it is cheaper? It's a question that has happened even here in the United States.
Who would like to take that question? Sir?
the microphone. If I well understand, you ask how is possible to improve global sustainable development in a global context without global rules, because I was not able to understand very, very well your question.
I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
How can you?
Yes, yes, please. Just a minute, yes,
yeah,
in
okay.
order to understand.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Is it working now?
Yeah.
Okay, my question is this. How can you assure sustainable development without creating too much of a burden for companies to operate in countries? And these companies are so burdened by these regulations sometimes that it may be easier for them to ship their production to other places where it is done without this same idea. So unless there is a global compact with all the players, I do not see that going very far. Thank you.
This is the question we have in Europe. This is the question we have between Europe and USA, for example, on climate change, because we in Europe adopt rules that USA is not adopting, and so we have something like unfair competition in the global market, because the companies work in Europe had to pay more than the companies work in USA, producing the same products. I know very well. And this is also the problem we have, I don't know, between Europe and China, what we call it carbon leakage, when our companies are delocalizing the productions outside Europe because of the high cost of the compliance with sustainable development rules. Yes, I believe that this is a component of the problem. The other maybe could be the agreement in the global market of common standards for the technologies, for the goods, for the products. Something like we have in the car sector. In the car sector today, nobody in China, USA, Europe, Brazil, South Africa is producing cars with different performances from the point of view of the environmental protection, energy consumption, and so. This is what is coming in the energy technologies for power plants, for using in most efficient way natural gas or oil and so. I believe that you are right, it's very difficult to compete in the global market having different rules in different countries and different economies. But at the same time, if you look at the real economy, we see that the more or less all the sectors, all the industrial sectors, are now working in the same path for the reduction of energy consumption, for the reduction of use of natural resources. And this is the right way for addressing global sustainable development. And maybe this could drive common rules. Maybe it's easier to work starting from the bottom up in the industrial sector than waiting for joint rules. In this way, I believe that what we can do and what we are doing, for example, in the cooperation between Italy and Brazil, both in bioenergies or the joint program with Osklen Group in textile sector, what we are doing? We are doing in order to set the technologies, the best practices able to address sustainable development, even if the rules are different in Italy and Brazil. And I think that is a good way. I'm working in the international negotiations for environment, climate change, and so since 90, a long time. I can say that the most important development we had, for example, in climate change or in ozone layer protection, are coming from the private sector and coming from joint programs more than from rules.
I see all these hands, and I've been told that we've run out of time. So I'm so sorry. Perhaps you can pull one of our distinguished guests aside and ask your question after we retire here. But thank you very, very much, and a round of applause, please, for our distinguished panel.
Thank you, Minister.